pattern, and the archetype keeps repeating itself over and over again. But like my brothers and sisters said up here, the privilege that you haven't given us is you've unified us, because enough is enough. You see it happening in South America, you see it happening in Central America, in Australia, everywhere. And so if we don't do, I have a 5-year-old grandson, and then I have another one coming. And so in all the societies of indigenous populations, we don't think about ourselves just alone. We think about our grandchildren and the water, because I want my grandchildren to have clean water. And so I think that I could stand here all day and explain this to you, but you would have to come live with us to understand that, because one of the most racist things in the world is to tell a population, you shouldn't hurt. You should see why we need this. That is a really, really blatant, insensitive thing to tell a population that has lived here for thousands of years. And so I hope that I've addressed that, but like my brothers and sisters said, is we are prepared to do all of the above, because enough is enough. Thank you.
Madeline, you still have a follow-up question?
I'm just, are you more worried about the tar sand development or the oil spill? Is there one that worries you more, or it's together?
That's why I invited you to come live with us, because then you will understand that this happened 100 years ago, it happened 200 years ago, and in your lifetime you're witnessing it. So you're very young in humankind, so it keeps repeating itself. So it's not like tar sands is here, oil spill is over here, it's like our humanity is right here. So come live with us and you'll understand. Thank you.
Michael Woods, Post Media News.
Yeah, my question is for Chief Adam. You mentioned this special representative that Minister Oliver appointed yesterday. You brought up that I think he has no credibility on the issues. I'm just wondering if you can elaborate a bit on that. Some people seem to be expressing sort of cautious optimism about it. Other people think it's sort of a divide and conquer thing. But this is a representative who's going to be speaking, as I understand it, with individual First Nations in BC and Alberta about pipelines and other things, and then reporting directly to the Prime Minister, which seems like it could be an opportunity to maybe get those, you know, it seems like perhaps a go-between between the Prime Minister and individual nations, which is what some people have been calling for. So I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on what you said about it.
Well, if you go back to when the Prime Minister met with First Nations back in January, at the meeting, the First Nations had asked a question about revenue sharing, and the Prime Minister had said something in regards, Canada has no obligation into revenue resource sharing. You have to go and speak with the province. And yet they appoint this chief federal negotiator from Canada to go and deal with the First Nations in BC to push through the Northern Gateway. And one of their comments was in regards to that was something about either ownership or revenue sharing to it. So why is the Prime Minister saying one thing to the First Nations and yet publicly announcing the fact that they're just going to go and throw some dollars at First Nations people that are going to be affected from the Northern Gateway? So therefore, from our perspective, dealing with Canada for the last 20 years, and it's not only the fact that the Conservatives were in power, let's face the fact that the Canadian government in general does not like to deal with First Nations issues, regardless of what government forms a government. The fact remains that the First Nations issues will continue to be a burden on the federal government because the federal government continues to turn the blind eye. And when the federal government goes to the World Bank Association to ask and borrow money on behalf of Canada, one of the questions that they're asked, are you in debt when you borrow this money? And Canada says no. Well, they're not taking our issues into consideration because Canada owes a big debt to the First Nations people here in Canada. And as long as that continues to happen, I don't think this is going to go anywhere, because if he keeps throwing dollars at the First Nations and says these are program dollars, I don't think so. Because I think the Canadian public is fed up with the taxation issues in regards to their tax dollars going to First Nations people. I think it's time now that we have to start talking about either revenue sharing or ownership into these projects. And then when we have a say at the table, Then we could start calling the shots in regards to sustainable development. Then we could talk about alternative measures in regards to green energy that we're focusing our attention on. But until then, I don't think this envoy has any credibility when moving forward when dealing with First Nations issues, because he clearly does not get it.
So just to follow up, so changing the sort of fiscal relationship and establishing proper revenue sharing, systems and everything, could this not be a step toward that? Or do you think it could be or not?
I think it's just another ploy that the government is using to get the First Nations away from the table, from getting into these public hearings and saying that, you don't have a voice at the public hearings, but we will deal with you in the back doors and make backdoor arrangements to address some of the issues that you have, and therefore, we'll turn the blind eye to the public, and therefore, we could close the issues and move forward on these projects. And one of the questions that were asked earlier, the fact is that, we have concerns with further development in the tar sands area, because with these pipelines that are going to be approved, regardless if it goes south, west, or comes east, they're all coming from our traditional territories. And the more pipelines that are going to be constructed, that means more development that's going to occur in our area. And there is nothing in regards to sustainable development there. It's all about radical behavior in regards to how development is going to occur, with no proper legislative policies that are going to be enforced. When we ask for stronger regulatory components in the environmental issues and all of the water issues and the air qualities and everything, what did the federal government do? They just shot the ominous bill, and all these regulatory systems and everything just collapsed. Everything went downhill. So nothing credible will ever come out of what the federal government is doing at this point in time.
Martin Stringer, CPAC.
To Chief Ruben George, I'd just like to get your opinion on a similar question with regards to this new envoy who's been named. What do you make of the new envoy? I mean, you alluded to him, but he is supposed to produce a report by November. Is there anything that it's Doug Eford or Effort, is there anything that the envoy can say in his November report this year that would satisfy you?
I think my relative, my auntie, addressed it. There, in the hunting that's been done and the fishing done, there's cancerous cysts in the animals that our family are hunting. The doctors say in my relative's territory, you can't bath the children for more than 3 minutes at a time because the water's so polluted. Like she said, come visit, come really see, come see the destruction that this is having on our earth, and how it's going to affect not only us as First Nations, but all Canadians. That's what we're saying. So, it's. I think I can't add any more than what my relative has said. But those are the hard, true facts, and that's what we're saying. We're not coming up with any stories here of. We're just telling the facts of what's going on and what's going to happen in the direction that we're going in. That global warming is happening.
This is just as a supplementary. This is a fellow you've sat down with, First Nations in Canada, sat down with as the comprehensive land claims negotiator. Are you saying that the whole process just got no credibility, won't have any impact, and whatever report he produces in November is not worth anything?
Look at the track record of the government, what they already said, like my relative said. Look at the track record of the things that are done. Look at the consultation that didn't happen in the way we see it. We have Indigenous laws that have been in place for years. All of us here had multiple villages in our traditional territories. We didn't deplete the resources in one area. We moved from village. We were and we are continue to be stewards of our land, and that's where we come from. That's where we want to start to talk, and that's the ceremonial connections that we have. My auntie said it. Come really see. Go look at the tar sands. What kind of reports are going to come out of that? We can tell you right now that we're saying no because it's not good. What more do we need to say to that? Well, how much more do we need to negotiate for that? What more could we need to say that, the cancer rates are high with our relatives that live close to the Alberta tar sands? What more facts do you need to know about the fish that we've been fishing and the animals that we've been hunting have cancerous cysts on them? Look out our doors and see that global warming is happening. One of the biggest industrial projects in the world are happening right now, and it's causing major destruction. That's what we're saying. We're standing up here and we're saying we're not just doing it for us, we're doing it for our future generations, their future generations.
Gentlemen? Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Is Chief Faith Spotted Eagle? I wonder if I could just ask you a question, because you mentioned the Keystone Pipeline. We're all watching with great interest. You mentioned the Winters Doctrine. You mentioned water use. You mentioned the aquifer. Now, we've been told that TransCanada's pipeline has now avoided the aquifer. Are you saying that there could be legal challenges in the States, even if the Obama administration gives a go-ahead, that there could be legal challenges to stop the Keystone, even in its new route, which supposedly avoids this aquifer?
We're looking at all of the above. And like I said, we have a 400, 500-year history of the same archetype happening over and over. And so over those 500 years, we've learned some tools. And so we'll be bringing out those tools. But one of the greatest tools that we have is our spirituality, because we know the land. I remember my father used to say, the immigrants that have come to this land, they won't care about the environment until they've been here about 200 or 300 years. So it took about that long now for the environmentalists to talk about green. So we're patient, and we hope that you'll continue to learn, because like nephew Ruben said, it isn't about us. We have to be able to rise above that post-conflict society, because we're still at war. The government is at war with us, and that's all I can say about that. But we will try all of the above. Thank you.
Gentleman in the third row.
And I'm not a chief, I'm a treaty delegate and a head of a women's society.
My name is Daniel Rodriguez. I'm a reporter with the Hill Times. This is a question for everyone. Are you thinking that we're reaching a breaking point, that we're not going to be able to negotiate anymore? And if yes or no, why?
I was going to add this of what I see happening really clearly in the United States, and I believe it's going to happen here more and more. There's now a new alliance. It's called the new CIA. That's the Cowboy Indian Alliance. Bold, Nebraska, and other farmers and ranchers have come together and signed our international treaty to protect the sacred tar sands projects as supporters, not as sovereign nations. They came together. In fact, they're more emphatic than we are about what the government's doing in the United States. We had a Friday visit. They had 14 ranchers and farmers there. Each one got up and they were incensed by what the government was doing, how they had a right to take the land without consulting with the people. Finally, about the last person to speak, a beautiful woman who's married to one of the ranchers there, he said, you know, I don't know how a government can treat people like this. They come and take their land. They come and take their resources. They're treating us just like, and of course all the native people were just listening without smiling. And all of a sudden one of our relatives said, like Indians. And everybody laughed. And one of the relatives came over and shook their hand and says, welcome to the tribe. So they're coming together. And they're standing together. And not only is it about water, it's about our sacred places. It's about where our ancestors are buried. It's about where our sacred places are standing. Those have to be protected. Those are sacred and protected by international law, by the way, in the United States and across 22 nations in South America through a treaty signed by President Roosevelt, which said any sacred place or historical place cannot be destroyed in war or peace. And that's what our international treaty is based upon. Those 7 articles based upon that Rorschach Treaty. So there's many people who are going to stand up against this and are standing up against this, just besides people here.
Sorry, but are we reaching a breaking point in the negotiations that we're not going to be able to continue negotiating between the Aboriginal people and the government?
I think at this point in time, you know, the First Nations are still willing to talk about negotiations. But what's at the table from Canada's perspective in regards to negotiations? You cannot continue to railroad First Nations issues just by throwing program dollars out there to say everything's going to be okay.